Welcome back to my channel. If you are new, hit the subscribe button. We are going to cover lots of true crime, lots of addiction stories, lots of survivor stories, and even makeup tutorials. So just watch the content that you like and don't watch the content that you don't. But I am coming on here because it is a day before my 2-year anniversary of being sober. November 4th, 2017, I decided to give up my drug of choice. My drug of choice was 30 milligram Percocet. I only like them without Tylenol, and I use them nasally. And so I did this for 4 years straight, every day for 4 years. And it destroyed those 4 years of my life. But it did not define me. It did not make me who I am today. And this is my addiction story. Back about, I think it was 2013, I used to make fun of people at work that had to have a pain pill. I had gotten pain pills earlier in life whenever I'd have teeth pulled or something done, and it was always a Vicodin of some sort, maybe a 10 milligram, and they made me sleepy, itchy, and I didn't like them. And so I never really thought what the hype was. And there were people at my job that would literally use their work money, the bank that they owed the restaurant, to buy their drugs. And then when it came time to pay at the end of the night, they wouldn't have enough money to give to the restaurant to pay what they owed for their checks. And so I watched so many people in a server environment. I was a bartender, but usually in the restaurant place, there are a lot of people that have struggling addictions. And so I was one of those people that used to laugh and say it was crazy how they needed a pill and how could you get like that. And so I'm the first person to tell you that don't ever make fun of addicts, because you could find yourself in their shoes and looking back feeling like an idiot like I did. So my dad in February of 2013 was diagnosed with lung cancer. And it hit us all very, very hard. And he had to do chemo and radiation. And he stayed at my house for a while. And I had to take care of him. And I gave him little shots in his belly for blood thinners and things like that. And made sure he was okay. But it ended up, they put him on some pretty strong pain medicine. So about once or twice a week, he would be around, and I never even thought about taking any of his pain medicine because he needed it. And I hated pain pills. Pain pills were stupid to me. And so I was drinking one night, and I had some friends over, and my dad wasn't there. He had went back to Tennessee where he lived, and was spending time with his family there. And my friends found my dad's pain medicine and they went crazy. I mean, they were acting like it was gold, like it was just, and I was appalled by it. I'm just like, you guys are ridiculous. So then all of a sudden those friends wanted to come over all the time, and they were always asking me about my dad's pills. And so one night I got really, really drunk, and they told me that I could sober up if I took a pill. Well, I was terrified because I had already had friends dying from drinking and doing pills. And so I was scared. And so I just did a little bit. And it was my first time doing a Percocet. I had never had Percocet before. I'd only been prescribed Vicodin. I was pretty healthy. The only thing that I ever had to go to the doctor for was to deliver my babies. And so I took that Percocet and it woke me up. I wasn't drunk anymore, and I was focused and talking, and I really liked the way that it made me feel, that it wasn't like any other pain medicines. It gave me all this energy. And it was 2 a.m. when I took it, and I was about to pass out from being, just coming down from my alcohol. I guess I wasn't really drunk, but I was buzzing and feeling sleepy, and that pain pill woke me up, and like I started cleaning my house. I started doing stuff. And so the next day I decided that I wanted to feel what it felt like not drinking. And again, I got everything organized. I was full of energy. I was talking. I was out of my shell. I was being like the best version of me that I thought I could ever be. And this medicine is what did it to me. And so I knew that people got addicted because I had worked with all these people that were addicted to opiates. And so I knew not to do it every day. And my dad wasn't at my house every day, so I really didn't have access to him. So I was only doing it in the beginning about once or twice a week. And I loved them. I thought they were great. So then my dad passes away in August of that same year. And I remember wanting to numb myself that night when he had fell asleep in his coma. And we were all just waiting for his heart to stop. God rest his soul. Right there. And I was messed up that night because I didn't want to feel any of this. And the nurses had already told me it was time, and he had been in hospice for 2 weeks. And so I spent a week before that with him in ICU, sleeping in the chair. And so I knew it was time and that he didn't need to suffer anymore. And it had metastasized to his vertebrae and his brain. And so it was just better that he went on. But I didn't want to feel the grief the next day. I didn't want to feel the fact that my daddy was gone. And so I ended up keeping the pain medicine and taking them. And when the bottle ran out, I was forced with these emotions, and I just wanted to be the way that I was when I had that bottle of pills. And so I was messed up the night my dad died in my arms, and I was messed up at his funeral on these Percocet. And so I still didn't get caught by that demon. It wasn't caught, or by that addiction, or whatever you want to call it. Wasn't fully in its grasp yet. And so I guess my dad died in August. It was around December. I woke up one morning and one of my right breast was swollen the size of a basketball. And it was huge. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctor sent me to mammograms, and he gave me a prescription that day because it hurt. I mean, it was big. And he gave me a prescription of Norcos, and I think he gave me like 90 of them. I could take like 3 a day or something like that. And so that gave me a week's worth of taking them every day. So then I didn't like them as much as I had liked my dad's. And so I started trying to find them on the street. And plus I was getting them prescribed from the doctor because they were still trying to find out what was going on with my right breast. Well, fast forward, they said they had to remove my implant that I had gotten put in Mexico. Yes, I was the idiot that went overseas. I have a whole video on it. If you want to find out about it, watch that video. Long story short, they had to take one of my implants out. They tried to save me some money by taking one out. And when that one healed, I could get the other one put in. So I had one implant and nothing on this side for 3 months. And so that made me really insecure. I was walking around calling myself Cyclops boob, Uniboob. Like, that's how I deal with things. I crack jokes at the too soon and at the inopportune moments, but that's my way of dealing with things. I just make fun, and I'm working on that. But anyway, it bothered me bad. Plus the doctor was continuing to give me the medicine, and I was finding them on the streets. I was broken because my dad had just died, and I was going through Thanksgiving and Christmas, the holidays without him. And So I became a full-on addict. Like, they did the surgery and took that one out, an emergency surgery. They gave me medicine after that. I got pain pills after that. And then when I went in to get it put back in, they found out that the left one had a blood clot in it. And so they had to remove it. And I got pain pills after that. And so I had this steady supply of pain pills, and then lo and behold, someone that sold pain pills just fell out of the sky while I was bartending at work, and I ended up getting them for super cheap, and so I could get them for my friends, and I could get 2 or 3 for me for free, because I would collect their money first, and I would charge them $10 more. Now, I was paying $40 a day for these, you guys. When I met this guy, I ended up getting them for $25. And so it was just like a setup, you know what I mean? Everything just kept happening, and I just kept falling deeper in. And so, then I started needing more. I needed more. 1 or 2 wasn't enough, and I needed 3 or 4. And I was starting to pawn things, and I used to collect firearms, and I was selling those, and I was just being reckless. And I was working every single day so I could get money for, I already only had 1 day off a week. And so I would work my day off. I would work open to close just so I could feed my habit. I was struggling. Things were going under. I was checked out when it came to my responsibilities, and I would rob Peter to pay Paul just to feed my habit. And there would be times that I owed my dealer $350. And so what I would do is I would gather everybody's money and tell them I would come back with them something, and I would give that to my dealer and pray that he didn't say there aren't any more. And so the last time I got from my dealer, I had to pretty much stiff him, because I gave all the people their stuff, and then I never had the rest of the money to pay him back. And I'll tell you what I did with that later on once I got sober. So it was getting bad, and I had a boyfriend at the time that was 15 years younger than me, and so I was having to get him some at the same time because he really never had any money, and he was just a kid. And why I even dated him, I do not know. But remember, I was a full-blown addict, and I got all the way up to 10 30 milligram Percocets a day, and I was only 117 pounds. There were so many times I laid down in my bed at night and I prayed to God to save me and to not let me die in the middle of the night, that I felt like I was fading out, like it was the end. And there was a couple of times that I got fake pills. There are actually ways that people can buy blue powder, and they can mix whatever they want in there and press it and make it look just like a Percocet 30. And so I took one day and it didn't hit me yet. And so I took another one, and I thought my tolerance was up. So I did 3 in a row, and then bam, all of a sudden it hit me like I was on meth or bath salts, and I felt weird and icky and And so I called the person I got them from, and I was like, what did you give me? And he said it wasn't him, it was his friend that gave it to me, and that he didn't mess with that stuff. And so me being in the mentality that I was, being on this drug that I'd never been on, I was hyped up and I wanted justice, and I was mad that I didn't get my Percocets because I was probably withdrawing at the same time. And I marched down to the guy's house and I sat on his couch, knowing that the dealer was going to call him back because he had to have called him and told him what I said. So the first number that came across his phone, I memorized in my head, then went home and called this random dealer that I have no idea who he is, screaming at the top of my lungs. He knows where I live because this was like my neighbor that I did this through. And I'm just like telling him that he robbed me and that I want justice. I mean, I don't know where I got all this liquid courage, but it probably was whatever was in those pills. So I wasn't right for 2 days after that. So that was one time I cheated death, not knowing what was in those pills. So then, whenever me and my boyfriend couldn't afford the pills, we would buy a methadone from somebody and we would split it and we would get by on that methadone for a couple of days whenever we didn't have money to get pills. And then when we got money to get pills, we would just go back to pills. Well, we went to the beach and I was on that methadone and I was drinking and I blacked out drinking on methadone. I don't know what is wrong with me. No one ever told me that I couldn't. I just thought that you could because I was able to drink drink on Percocet. So why wouldn't I be able to drink on methadone? I was a complete idiot and I should have died that night. My boyfriend, ex-boyfriend now, but he said I tried to jump off the pier into the water, and then I just remember throwing up for hours that night, mixing alcohol and methadone and nodding out and feeling like I that was another night that it was all going to end. And I remember times when I was withdrawing, I would just go through my phone and message random people asking them if they knew where I could get any Percocet. It was so bad, like how embarrassing when I look back on it. I would ask people that I know didn't even do drugs, but I was hoping that there just might be some random chance that they could find me something. And so my boyfriend decided that it was much cheaper for him because he didn't make as much money as me bartending, and I was only ever willing to give up a piece of my pill if we didn't have enough to buy him any. He decided that he was going to go to heroin and that it was cheaper and that I could have all the money for the pills. And instead of seeing that as a red flag and getting out, I was happy that that was more drugs for me, that he could do his heroin and I could do all the pills. His heroin only cost $20. My pill was $40. So he was doing me a favor is how I looked at it. That is just so messed up the way that I looked at it. But again, I was a full-blown addict at this point. And so we got a motel room because I tried to never have that around my children. And we got a hotel room and one night and he was falling asleep on me. And I'm like, Percocets don't make you fall asleep. And I had given him one. So I asked him if he did heroin and he said no, and that he did the Percocet, but he was just tired. Well, me being the detective that I am, I started rummaging through his stuff and I found the Percocet that he gave me, or that I gave him, and he didn't take it. So obviously he was doing heroin. And then I found this little bitty black tar thing, and I woke him up and I asked him what it was, and he said it was hash. And so I was a smoker back then. I'm not now, but I have nothing against it whatsoever. It just makes me lazy and clouds my mind and gives me anxiety and makes my thoughts race. So I don't do that anymore. But what happened was he told me that that was hash. And so I gave him a chance and told him, I'm getting ready to smoke this. You better tell me if it's hash or not. If this is not hash, you know I've never done heroin in my life. You wouldn't let me smoke this, right, if it wasn't hash. And it looked like little black tar. And so I told him, I said, maybe you can't look me in the face and tell me that's what it is. So I'm going to go down to my car and I am going to smoke this. Please stop me if it's heroin. So I went down there and I just barely hit it and it tasted really funny. And I knew that he had lied to me immediately. And so I didn't even get to feel the effects of it because I was so angry and mad that he had allowed me to smoke heroin and that was the kind of person he was. So I went up there and we had this big blowout and I left coming home just traumatized that I had smoked heroin. And so I tried to go to the clinic the next day. Well, I get in the clinic and I tell them my issues and that I'm addicted to pain pills, and they tell me that they are going to put me on what's called methadone. Well, I knew that I had been taking methadone here and there whenever I was withdrawing or I couldn't find any kind of pain pills. And so I let them put me on methadone. They put me on methadone, and I was probably on it for about a month, and they had me up to 80 milligrams a day. Okay, that in 1 month, they got me up to 80 milligrams a day. And I'm clueless to all of this. I am just asking for help, and I'm willing to do anything at this point. So it snows really, really bad here in North Carolina, and I can't get to the methadone clinic. They make you go every day in the morning except for Sunday, and I can't get there. Well, that next day it snowed again, and I had rear wheel drive at the time, and I just couldn't get to the clinic. Well, on that next day, on that third day that I hadn't had it, I felt horrible, worse than I ever had felt not having any Percocet. My bones hurt, my hips hurt. I was bending and stretching, trying to get the kinks out of everything, and it was awful. It was the worst feeling I have ever felt in my entire life, and I have given birth 5 times, you guys. So that I knew right then and there that this was not okay, and so I went to check myself into a rehab. Well, a rehab would not take me because I had methadone in my system and Percocets. They would have found a rehab to take me, but because I had methadone and Percocets in my system, because after I couldn't get to the methadone clinic and I decided that I never wanted to take that ever in my life, of course I went back to the streets and got back on Percocet. So when they found the 2 in my system, they said that they couldn't take me anywhere, that nowhere could take me because of that combination, that nobody had the resources to deal with somebody that was on that combination. And so I pretty much got sent home. And once I got home, I went right back to my dealer and started getting pills again. And so then my boyfriend decides when I'm withdrawing the next time that maybe he could switch me over to heroin. Now, I have never shot up in my life. I have never done anything like that. But he told me that I could do a little bit of this in a spoon and water, and he put that black stuff, which was heroin, by the way, black tar heroin. He put it in the water and he let it dissolve, and he told me to snort it. Well, I did, and I felt nothing. So the 2 times that I've ever done heroin in my entire life, I felt nothing by the grace of God, because they say that once you do it, there is no turning back from that. So by the grace of God, mine was either fake, weak, or I just have ADHD so bad that it didn't work on me. I don't know what the case was, but by the grace of God, it did not work on me. And so me and him ended up having a falling out. I ended up kicking him out. I finally realized that he was a junkie and that I needed help and that I was never going to get better if he was still around. And so first thing I did was broke ties off of him with him. And then my best friend dies. Now, right before my dad died, my other best friend had died from a fentanyl patch. Then right after my dad dies, in the middle of my addiction, my best friend from my whole life dies from an overdose and is left in his house for 5 days before anybody finds him. And so that just brought back so much trauma, and I already hadn't been grieving for my dad. I had stuffed that down so far with the pain pills that that's all I knew. I woke up every day and I was on the hunt. I spent more time hunting them down than I did enjoying them. And so they just started controlling my life. And then when I went out to see my sons in Mexico, they live with their father out there in Mexico. I had to smuggle some in an Aleve bottle to get out there, but I didn't take enough for the whole week. And once I started withdrawing, I had to tell my ex-husband, who is the one that abused me and almost killed me. And so I ended up getting a fat lip and hit in front of my children while I was out there because of this. Now, I don't think that I deserved it or anything, but I would have never put myself in that situation with him if I wasn't an addict. I would have never even been around him. I have went to Mexico plenty of times and visited my children and not seen him. I can get a a gated resort. My kids get dropped off. They spend the week with me, and then he comes and picks them up at the gated resort at the end of the week. That's how we did it before. But my brain was so clouded. My judgment was so clouded. I had already smoked heroin at this point, and so I just really didn't care about me. And so I allowed myself to be put in that situation, and my kids saw him put me in check. And I'm not saying that in a good way at all. I did not deserve that. I'm not saying what he did was right. I'm just saying that a smart person would have not put herself in that environment. And so, and that's a whole nother story in itself that I promise to tell you guys. Trust me, I will. I was 117 pounds. I was about to lose everything. The only thing that I had left was my car and my house, and I was barely keeping that afloat. And so I decided to go back to the clinic and be put on Suboxone. Or Subutex, I'm sorry. The Suboxone I was allergic to, the orange or something, it gave me hives and itchy all over, and so I wasn't able to take those, but I took the Subutex. Well, they prescribe you 2 to 3 of those a day, okay? So you got to be careful going to the clinic and getting too high of a dose, because you're just going to be just as addicted to that as you are the drug of choice. And so I thought that I needed all of those, and I took them. And then again, the same thing happened to me when I couldn't get to the clinic to get my refill, or I didn't have the money for it, whatever it was, I couldn't go. And I was withdrawing again. And the withdrawal from the Subutex, the methadone, was so much worse than the Percocet ever was. And so it was at that point, it was right around November of 2017, that I decided that I was going to walk away from that clinic, and that I was going to keep a month's prescription and wean myself off of them. That I was just going to wean myself off of them, and that I didn't need them anymore, and it was time for me to get my life back. So I did. I went home, and for 6 days, I took half of a Subutex. Then for 6 days, I took a quarter of a Subutex. And then for the next 2 weeks, I took a quarter of a Subutex every other day. Then for the next 2 weeks, I took a quarter of a Subutex every 3 days. Until I was only taking it once a week. And then at that point, I didn't even need it anymore. And now I know that I will always be an addict. I do keep some of those on hand from my old prescription, which I haven't had to use very much, for those days when I'm having cravings, when I feel like that my world is caving in on me and I want to be numb. The Subutex do not make you numb. They do not give you a euphoria. They do not make you high. They do take away that psychological need and want for your drug of choice, especially opiates. So, if you are wanting to break free of these chains, I'm not telling you to go to a clinic, because they're just going to get you just as much addicted as the drugs were. What you have to do is be under a doctor's care and have a doctor wean you off of Suboxone or Subutex. It is the only thing I found that worked. I tried to quit cold turkey. I tried to get taken out of town so I wouldn't be around any of these people, and to detox out of town. That didn't work. I tried so many different things, you guys. I tried vitamins. I tried supplements. I tried kratom. I tried everything that you could possibly imagine. I tried tramadol. Everything. I probably quit Percocets in that 4 years at least 100 times. And it's just a just something that gets a hold of you and won't let go, and you have to become stronger than it. You have to become stronger than your addiction. You have to overpower that desire inside of you to do those things. And so an idle mind is the worst thing you can do. You have to keep yourself busy. You have to stay driven. You have to stay focused. You have to not be around those kind of people. You have to cut those people out of your life. You have to make new friends. You have to build new relationships. You have to just put all of that behind you and move forward. You can't walk around with a scarlet letter around your neck. You can't walk around thinking that you are the bad guy, because once you get all of that off of your back, it's so much easier to move forward. It's so much easier when you forgive yourself for what you've done. It's so much easier when the people around you forgive you. And if the people around you aren't forgiving you and they're still throwing your past in your face, get away from those people until you're strong enough to handle that. Just make sure you have a support system. Make sure that you are talking to somebody. Make sure that you have somebody to tell you that you are doing a good job. Make sure that you just cut all the negativity out of your life and focus on you. You can do it. I know you can. I am going on 2 years sober, you guys, on November 4th, which is tomorrow. And I am elated to know that I made it this far. I've only made it half the time I was addicted, and it just gives me the drive to want to go that much further. Why would I want to mess up 2 years? Once you get to that point, it's different when you've only been sober for a week. You're like, oh, it's just been a week. I'll do 2 weeks next time. And if that's how you have to do it, great. If you stay sober for a week, that's awesome. Make it 2 weeks the next time. Make it 2 months the time after that. Make it forever the time after that. It's okay if you fail. Just get back up and try it again, because there is a future for you. But as long as you allow your past to dictate your future, you will never heal. Forgive yourself. Move on from it. Give yourself a big ol' hug. And if no one else is doing it, pat yourself on the back. Because if you are sober for any amount of time, it's better than the life that you lived as an addict 24/7. So you got to start somewhere, even if it's a day. Let today be your day. Know that there are a lot of people out there that have survived it, and know that there was 4 years that I didn't. So I'm not sitting here on my high horse saying that I am like accomplished, because for 4 years I royally effed up my life and made the worst decisions on the planet. So if you want to reach out and you want some support, or you want somebody to talk to, I'll put my email in the description box. But just know that you're not alone, and that there are people that are here, that are willing to support you, that are willing to understand you and not judge you. And that's what you need. If you are going to get a support system, you need somebody that's going to uplift you, be firm with you, but not make you feel